Hello and welcome to this episode of HBCU, where my special guest is Dr. Herman Felton, President and CEO of Wiley College. Herman, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on.
Thank you, D. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Man, listen, you have an impressive resume and background. I don't know where to get started, but we're going to jump in anyway. So I'm looking at your resume, and you've had a long history with HBCU, starting with your graduate degree at Edward Waters College.
Yes.
So talk to me about your time at Edward Waters and what that experience was like.
It almost didn't happen, D. I was a non-traditional student working at the post office in Jacksonville, Florida, and wanted to go to college. And I took the SAT, didn't do well, applied to get into UNF and JU. And I, quite frankly, did not know that Edward Waters was there. And I'm standing in the line to register for the Florida Junior College, which is what it was called at that time. And Mr. Andre Wilson came over and said to me, "You don't want to go here. You can go to Edward Waters." And at the time, I thought, like, what is that? Yeah. Where? And he said, it's the black college right down the road. And I'm like, they probably won't take me. I only have a GED. So he said, I'll be fine. You just come on down. I went down, got enrolled. That was in May. And because of my GED and my unsuccessful attempt at high school and taking tests, I had to go through the summer bridge program. And so it started for me August, actually in July, and August was the beginning of my professional career as a student at Edward Waters College. It's the only place that accepted me.
Wow.
And that gave me an opportunity, and I'm forever indebted to it. It means the world to me, though.
But you graduated from Edward Waters.
I did.
And went on to law school, correct?
I did. 3 years, I worked full-time at the post office and went to school full-time, got out in 3 years, and was awarded a full scholarship to the University of Florida, Levin College of Law. So went to law school and banged that out in 3 years.
Wow.
But it was Edward Waters that prepared me for law school.
Yeah, and we hear, I think that's really the kind of the backstory story with HBCUs is how they provide that support and that nurturing and really prepare you for that next stage of life.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to reflect back on some of the experiences there?
I mean, there's so many. I'll start with Easy Ogueri II, PhD, White House fellow, just a brilliant political scientist. And he was teaching over at the University of North Florida and knew that it was his obligation to also give that same knowledge to students at Edward Waters College. And what I had no idea that he was preparing me for was excruciating. We had to take some 3-4 credit courses, 4-hour credit courses. And depending on how many credits at the end of the semester, that's how long your exam was. And it was written. And there were no makeup tests, there were no quizzes, no pop quizzes. One test was the determining factor for your grade. And little did I know when we got to law school, the professors exclaiming how difficult it is, and look to your left and look to your right, and oh, by the way, if it's a 3-hour course, you're gonna write for 3 hours. If it's a 4-hour credit course, you're gonna write for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this guy prepared me for battle without me even knowing it. So that was just one example of what happens at these places. I don't care if it's Edward Waters, Howard, Tougaloo, Mississippi Valley, it doesn't matter. That secret sauce is shared at all of those institutions.
So I would say just learning about your story, I mean, you beat really all these statistical odds because, one, you don't really see someone, with a GED, graduate from college. That's rare. I mean, it happens, but it's rare. And then you go on to law school, graduate from law school. But then you also have a PhD from Jackson State University.
Yep.
Talk to me about that.
Serendipitous is probably a really poor word to try to describe what has happened to me. And it's a phenomenal word, right? But it is God, a praying mama, and tenacity that I was innate, but was honed by the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that I was dyslexic. And so I went from, kindergarten all the way to the 11th grade twice, thinking that I was slow, had a mental disorder.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment in second grade when I knew that I couldn't read. And it wasn't that I couldn't read, my encoding skills were off, and the letters appeared jumbled at times, backwards. So it makes it difficult for you to put a word together.
Right.
And so when I was in the Marine Corps and was told that I was dyslexic, and then a nugget came with that diagnosis, and it was this little portly, middle-aged white woman that said, most people with dyslexia are above average in intelligence. My world has not been the same. Just the affirmation that I was not slow.
Right.
Which I knew it was a contradiction, right? I'm able to navigate things and communicate, but I just felt there was something amiss.
Right.
But her sharing with me that, and then going on, getting out of the Marine Corps, and then going to Edward Waters and having this confidence that I didn't do well in public school because, my mom didn't have the resources or no one even could catch the fact that I was dyslexic.
Right.
So it wasn't because I couldn't. It was because I didn't know how, or didn't know that I could. And so school came fairly easy to me. Once I was able to read, comprehension was never a problem.
Never an issue,
and so this insatiable appetite to slaughter everything in front of me is just, why I am still where I am. And it goes back to even Edward Waters, Jimmy Jenkins, who was the president at that time. I was the SGA president, and I went to a board meeting. And the board decided that it wanted to, at that time, increase the admission standards, and they wanted to decrease the amount of students who came in through the open door admissions program, or the open doors admissions process.
Yeah.
And that's how I got in, open door admissions. And so I watched them go around the table one by one and make a case for why they should do that. And then I watched Jimmy Jenkins get up and verbally assault every one of them with the most eloquent words. And this nexus between the mission then, the newly freed slave, where we are now today, and what he believed was our manifest destiny, which was tied to education, and how that opportunity had to be there. And it was at that moment where I knew that I wanted to be a Black college president at a small private institution. It was born there.
Yeah.
He gave me the roadmap, and I just sat out like a Tasmanian devil trying to get there.
Well, you have done a great job because you have not, you are the president and CEO of Wiley College, but you've also served in that role at other institutions as well. So if you would, just kind of walk me through, how do you transition into that first presidency role?
What's funny is that 2 years in 2014, I was appointed president at Wilberforce University. And my mentor, Dr. Jimmy Jenkins, and Roger McLean, who was the CFO, who has since passed on, looked at the financials, looked at the state of the college, and he said, young man, I know you want to be a president, but you don't have the skill set to do this. You don't have the skill set to go into this place and do that. And it was easy for me to say, you know what, you know better than I do. I'm not going. And so I declined the offer. I went through the process and was appointed the president and declined. So I came back I'm at Livingstone for a couple of years. And then I got a call out of the blue. And it was the chairman of the board who said, hey, we have interviewed a couple folks. We're about to make a decision, but I remembered your conversation. I remembered us appointing you a couple years ago, and I just wanted to check back. The institution is in a better place. You have to be a stronger leader by now. And I went from, a phone call at 2:00 on a Friday, being the senior vice president and chief operating officer at Livingstone, to being the president at Wilberforce. Didn't interview the second time. It was strictly off the strength of that last interview 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I became the president at Wilberforce, the oldest and first African-American owned institution of higher learning.
Right.
And it was a flat out honor to be there as well.
What were some of your achievements and challenges at Wilberforce?
The challenges were many. The challenges looked like accreditation issues, enrollment issues. All of my predecessors did the very best that they could with the hand that they were dealt with, right? And this institution is storied, but went through some challenges. And they were there waiting for me, and I left them, and my predecessor had them waiting for him, so on and so forth. So it was enrollment, it was academic rigor, it was accreditation, it was all of the challenges that you can think of at a small private, historically black college. And I think we were able to leave it far better than it was when I found it. No knock on anyone who was there before me, but our creed is to do no harm. And I certainly feel like I didn't harm the institution in those short 2 years that I was there.
And so you serve as the president of Wilberforce, and then you continue to just slaughter everything in front of you, to use your words. And so tell me about the next presidency appointment that you received.
God makes no mistakes. Hayward Strickland, who was my predecessor, I met him while I was at Livingstone College, and he was impressed with the way I served Dr. Jenkins. Absolutely enamored with making sure that my president was taken care of. Enamored with knowing what he wanted before he knew what he wanted. Just understanding what it meant to serve a baby boomer. Like that's no easy job, right? Because they are, in my mind, unapologetic about their commanding of excellence. And so he watched at how I, serviced Dr. Jenkins, staffed him. And then he noted that I was at Wilberforce and able to do some stuff. And he thought, Wiley is, in better shape. It might be a good look for you. And asked if I would be interested. And I went through the process and came out the 17th president. So it was, a byproduct of keeping your head down and doing good work. Being excellent where you are will get you where you want to go. But I've always believed that if you take care of what's in front of you, then what's ahead of you will take care of itself. And make ready for you.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Now, we're going to get to Wiley College here shortly, but I want to know more about the Higher Education Leadership Foundation, because it seems that organization is serving a very crucial role within the HBCU space.
I think so. It was born out of this ideal that I was at Livingstone College, and that bug of being the president was on me. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. And so I knew that I had friends who were committed to these institutions as well, that also wanted to figure out how we could be of service.
Right.
We all want to lead from the front, but we'll lead wherever we need to lead from. And so I was doing research. Leadership is something that I absolutely love. And you start thinking about the space writ large, the sector, the entire HBCU sector. And at that time, back in 2014, they were talking about this impending doomsday of retirement, baby boomers leaving and what's going to be next.
Right.
And I remember this executive director for the White House Initiative on HBCUs stating that he didn't know if there were a bumper crop of leaders coming behind to replace those. And so I thought, you know what? There's a void. I'm going to run to that void and I'm going to fill it. And invited a couple of people to come and talk about HBCU leadership. I invited actually about 15 or 20 people. 2 people came. I was like, man, I like this. We're going to do this again. I did it again. Invited 40 or 50 people, maybe 2 or 3 people came. And then I had a brother by the name of Reggie Bean who worked at Coca-Cola, zealot of the space. And I told him, like, man, I think I want to start an organization to train the next wave of leaders. I want to strengthen the pipeline of leadership at HBCUs. And he said, well, that sounds like a great idea, certainly a need, but let me know when you get down the road.
Yeah.
And so I went, filed for articles of incorporation, did a 501c3, got a website, built everything, went back to him and said, hey, man, I'm going to do an event in June. I found a place, et cetera, et cetera. Wasn't thinking about anything, wasn't asking for any support. He gave me a check for $25,000.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of the Higher Education Leadership Foundation, which twice a year we would select 25 members and expose them to presidents that are newly appointed, those who are in the middle of their journey, and those who are at the tail end, while also helping them understand the nexus between the vice president of institutional advancement and the vice president of student affairs and the vice president for finance and the vice president for athletics and the vice president for academic affairs, understanding how it all works.
Right.
And we've been successful, 425 fellows to date. We've had 12 cohorts. 7 of us are HBCU presidents now. We don't espouse to be the singular reason why they are HBCU presidents, but they weren't HBCU presidents before they went to health.
Right.
And all of us share that. And a lot of us gleaned some pretty good points, particularly around interviewing, executive presence and all of those things. And we find ourselves in this wonderful place now where we're looking for voids in the space, running to them and filling them. We have an academic journal that will be produced here at the first week of April for scholars. And we have a podcast. And now we're doing 2 things, training newly appointed presidents, because the average tenure for a president at a HBCU is 3.8 years.
Yeah.
Nobody wins there. The institution needs the stability,
right.
And the presidents need the job, right? So we're helping with that with a grant with UNCF, powered by Kresge, the Kresge Foundation. And we also set out to do something that I think is bold and audacious, which is to convene a gathering to talk about sustainability at HBCUs. So in June in Charlotte, the Charlotte Convention Center, we're hosting the Ideation, Innovation, and Collaboration Institute for the Future of HBCUs. And we're bringing the entire academic enterprise together to ideate around, how do we find self-agency?
Right.
So it's morphed into something, quite frankly, that I never would have imagined that it would be, but we're here, and I think there's a lot of work to do in that space as well. All in the vein of sort of what you're doing here. you know, amplifying
Right.
the brilliance, the intelligentsia, the ingenuity at HBCUs. Our focus is, you know, rather myopic, and it's around the leadership.
Right. And so now let's get to Wiley College, where you currently serve as president and CEO. Tell me, how do you land at Wiley College? And I see that you have done a lot of projects since you've been there, capital improvement projects, raising funds, et cetera. So tell me about that journey.
Getting there was phenomenal in that the board was very intentional about having a true peaceful transition. I came in February and I learned, I was quiet, I read, I observed for 6 months. I watched, about 4 months, I watched my predecessor manage cabinet meetings. I went through policies, looked at them. I studied the habit of the workforce. And when he departed in July, the 1st of July, I wasn't coming in looking under the hood for the first time. I kind of knew where our strengths and weaknesses were and opportunities for us to make some positive impact. It allowed for me to have a running head start. The other thing that he did was allowed me to pick my entire cabinet. He had his entire cabinet resign before I got there, and it allowed me to sink or fall with a team that I wanted to build. And I'm forever indebted for that decision. And then it was really about being in concert with the Board of Trustees, and which was so easy because he had a phenomenal relationship with them. And Wiley has been in existence for 149 years, and they've only had 17 presidents.
Wow.
And that shows you what type of board governance and partnership and collaboration with the administration they have. And so they're used to stability. And so we were able to get in and just put our heads down and tackle the challenges that were in front of us around accreditation and the heightened cash monitoring process, which means that the college has to front their money before you draw it down. You have to, you know, pay scholarships, pay financial aid. And so we had to work through some of those issues, but then we started looking at the campus and the infrastructure and just, you know, really raising money and reallocating resources to make some enhancements on the campus. It's been 4 years, D, but it feels like it's been 40.
And so from a challenge perspective, we know that challenges are not abnormal to HBCUs.
No.
I think
Any college.
Yeah, any college across the board. What would you say has been your biggest challenge?
I think following a giant, someone who's been at an institution for 18 years, you know, the council or the American Governing Board, AGB, did a study some years ago where they talked about culture and how long it takes to change culture. And the longer the tenure, the longer it typically takes. But on average, they presuppose that it's about 3 years to change the culture. I'm 25 years younger than my predecessor, and he was there for 18 years. And so some of those people only knew his work ethic, how he worked, his cadence. And I'm just a ball of fire, like just constant. And I want stuff now. I believe that kindness is the only way to operate. I don't have to be nasty to tell you that you missed a mark, but I demand that we are kind to each other. That's an adjustment for some people. And I think the biggest challenge has really been getting people to understand the sense of urgency. And to remind them of the greatness from which we came. So I think the challenges of fiscal resources and academics and all those good things will always be there, but changing culture is it.
Absolutely. Dr. Felton, I want to say this to you, that your story is remarkable, and I think it's one that's emblematic of the American dream. You are proof that a person that sets their mind to something, they can achieve whatever they want to achieve right here in this great country we live in, America, despite all of the flaws that we may, know about.
Yeah.
And so for your service and dedication and your continued commitment to advancing historically Black colleges and universities, I want to award you with our HBCU Lifetime Achievement Award for all that you've done. And I appreciate you, your inspiration.
Thank you, D.
And you also my fraternity brother.
Yes,
I can't close the show without acknowledging that you are a member of the noble clan of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
Indeed.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching this episode of HBCU. And remember, without you, there's no me.